Tonight, you will do something almost every human who ever lived would have considered an extraordinary luxury. You will flick a switch and flood a room with light without a single thought about the cost. But for nearly all of history, light was one of the most expensive things money could buy. An hour of decent light could cost an hour, or even a day, of hard labor. And then, in the space of a few generations, its price fell off a cliff, collapsing not by half, not by 10 times, but by a factor of hundreds of thousands. It is, quietly, the greatest cost decline in economic history. This is the story of the price of light. This is the long series. We can actually put a number on it thanks to the economist William Nordhaus, who traced the cost of light across 4,000 years. His measure is beautifully simple. How many hours of work did it take to buy a set amount of light? Start at the very beginning. A Babylonian, around 1750 BC, burning sesame oil in a clay lamp, would have to labor something like 40 hours, a full working week, to earn the light a modern bulb pours out in an afternoon. And for the next 3,000 years, that price barely moved. Why so staggeringly expensive? Because every source of light had to be fed. A lamp drank oil. A candle was made of precious tallow or beeswax, and all of it had to be gathered, rendered, molded, and tended by hand. The light itself was feeble, smoky, and flickering. A single candle throws out less than 1/100th the light of a cheap modern bulb. To read after dark was to literally burn money. For most households, when the sun went down, the day was simply over. So valuable was bright light that entire industries rose to chase it. In the 17 and 1800s, fleets of ships sailed to the ends of the earth to hunt whales, not for meat, but for the fine oil in their heads, which burned cleaner and brighter than anything else. Whole economies, whole ecosystems, were bent to the single task of pushing back the dark for a few more hours a night. The price of light was falling slowly, but it was still measured in real, painful effort. Then, in the 1800s, the line finally begins to break. First came town gas, piped into streets and homes. Then kerosene, refined from the new oil wells, gave a bright, cheap flame to millions. Watch Nordhaus's line on the chart. The price that had held near 40 hours of work in ancient times, and around 5 hours as late as 1800, tumbles to well under a single hour. In 1 century, light became something an ordinary family could finally afford to use freely. But the real collapse had not even started, because in 1879, Thomas Edison and others perfected something that would erase almost the entire remaining cost: the incandescent electric bulb. No flame, no fuel to carry, no soot, just a glowing wire and a wire in the wall. Electricity did not just make light a little cheaper, it detached light from fire for the first time in human history and sent its price into freefall. And freefall is the only word for what the chart does next. The tungsten filament made bulbs brighter and longer lasting. The fluorescent tube, in the mid-20th century, produced far more light from the same power. Each leap knocked the price down by another factor of 10. The line, which had taken 3,000 years to fall from 40 hours to 5, now fell 1,000-fold in a few decades. What had been a luxury fit for kings became too cheap to think about, and it kept falling. The compact fluorescent and then the LED pushed the cost of light down to a rounding error. Today, an hour of work at an ordinary wage buys you not minutes, not hours, but the equivalent of years of bright, continuous light. Set the ancient world beside our own, and the price of light has fallen by something like a factor of 500,000. The Babylonians' exhausting week of labor now buys a flicker. Our fraction of a second at work buys a blaze. Turn the measure around, and the scale of the victory becomes almost absurd. For 1 hour of work, a Babylonian could earn perhaps 10 minutes of dim, smoky lamplight. In 1800, that same hour of labor bought a few hours of candlelight. Today, 1 hour of work buys enough light to run a bright bulb continuously for decades. We are, in the most literal sense, many thousands of times richer in light than our great-grandparents, and we notice it about as much as we notice the air. So the next time you walk into a dark room and light it without a thought, remember that you are performing a small miracle that would have astonished almost every generation before the last few. The thing we now treat as free was, for 99% of human history, a genuine luxury, and its collapse in price is one of progress's greatest and least celebrated victories. Read the whole line. Not a slow decline, but a cliff that our own era fell off. We've measured wages, bread, life, work, shelter, and now the very light we read them by. Next time, distance, and how a journey that once swallowed a lifetime shrank to an afternoon. This is the Long series. Subscribe, and we'll keep reading the long lines together.